What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to my teeny tiny channel. I hope you guys had a great Christmas break, Christmas vacation, Christmas holiday. We're just before New Year's and I'm back in the garage. I've got a couple projects that I want to try to knock out today, and that is installing new springs on the Cobra and new door speakers on the Ferrari. Here's my box with my H&R springs that I just got a couple weeks ago or so. They've just been kind of sitting here, and the car already has springs on it. They are Eibach springs, I believe, but I think with these new springs, I can close this gap just a little bit. Now, I'm not trying to slam this thing, but this to me seems too much. So if I can get another, I don't know, maybe a ½ inch or so out of the new springs, that would really set this car where it needs to be, and it would look a whole lot. It looks good now, but it would just look so much better. So the plan is to get my quick jacks slid up underneath the car and get this thing up in the air, and I'll show you how to do this. If you've never attempted to do the spring swap on your car, on these old Mustangs, it's not a difficult job. If you're somewhat mechanically inclined, you've got some hand tools, maybe even a couple air tools, it's gonna make your life a whole lot easier. But it's not a difficult job, so don't be afraid to give this a shot. There's no reason that you should have to pay somebody to do the stuff that you can do. You know, you can't really mess this up. I'm also going to do speakers in the Ferrari today. Because of the holidays and the sales and all that, I was actually able to get a really good deal on a set of kicker door speakers. And we're going to replace the old Alpine speakers that hide right behind here. So we'll pull this door panel off and swap those out. They sound really good. I actually got them at a place called Car Toys. They had a setup in the wall where they could play music and I could hear the actual speakers to see what they sounded like, rather than just, you know, going to some box store and buying them off the shelf and having no clue. So here are the speakers that I chose. These are, I don't know, kicker 300 watt. I don't know the series. Doesn't really matter. They're gonna sound good anyway. You know, I don't need a whole lot in that car. I'm not trying to win a stereo competition. I just want it to sound good going down the road. All right, I'm gonna get this stuff set up, get this thing up in the air, and we'll get started. So all I did was make sure that I broke all the lug nuts loose before I got the wheels off the ground. That way I have the resistance of the ground and I don't have to fight it once it's in the air. And then just zipped them off with an impact. Now that these are off, I'm going to start in the rear. The rears are typically a whole lot easier to do. Not that the fronts are difficult, but the rears are definitely easier than the front. So I'm going to start back here, and if I remember correctly, I think all I have to do is undo this shock bolt here and on both sides, and then drop this rear end down on a jack, and then I'll be able to squeeze this spring out. So yes, they are Eibach springs. And I'll show you a comparison of this one with the new H&R springs. I'm not expecting to get a ton of drop, but I am hoping to get maybe another ½ inch out of it just to get this thing sitting right where it needs to be. This should be the same for all of the SN95 cars, which would be 94 all the way through 98, possibly up to 04. These bolts that hold these shocks on, all you have to do is put a jack underneath your rear end, take some of that weight, and then you're going to pull this bolt out and that one over there. And this is a 15 on this side and an 18 on that side. I was able to do it with hand tools instead of an air ratchet. It should be tight, but again, I was able to get it off with hand tools, so have after it. I like to put a screwdriver in there just to keep this thing down so I can get this bolt all the way out. Usually it makes it a little easier, but it doesn't seem to be the case this time. So we'll just slow and steady wins the race, I guess. There we go. Okay. All right. Now we're on to the next side. So now that those are disconnected, I lowered the jack and got the rear end sitting down low as I could. From here, You can see, you know, they're just a little bit right there holding it on here. So what I'll need to do is get a pry bar and push down, and then I'll be able to finagle this spring off that little perch right there. All right, so after some pushing on this and some prying on this, I was able to pop it off that little perch, and here she is. Here's our top isolator. Bottom, those are in good shape. I'll just clean those up. Looks like somebody replaced them when they put the new springs in. All right, let's see how this stacks up to the H&R spring. Well, they look, you know, pretty much the same, but the difference is going to be in the rate of the spring. So from what I've read, this one will actually sink down just a little bit more than what this one. This is a little bit stiffer, and that should give me that perfect ride height. And if it doesn't, then I just spent $300 on a new set of springs, and they're blue instead of black. And that's it. They went in really easy. This is how I align mine. I don't know that it really matters, because once this goes up, it's gonna fall into that perch anyway, and you can see it's already started on that side. Let's go around here, and there you go. I just kept the lettering out, that way if I ever had a question of which ones I put in and part numbers and all that, I could find it pretty easy. Now all I have to do is reattach the shocks, and should be okay. We're good to go on this. So now all I have to do is put the rear tires on. We'll get started on the front. Something that I noticed the last time I did this, I did not have these quick jacks. And when I go to lift up the rear end to line this back up, the jacks were actually lifting off the ground because I was lifting from the rear and pushing all the weight towards the front. So if you're doing this and you're doing it in your driveway with just jack stands and a jack, that's how I've done it in the past. It was actually a lot easier. It was a little sketchy with these things coming up off the ground, but it worked. I'm still here. Well, I'm still here for now. We'll see how the fronts go. Pro tip, I always add some anti-seize. I usually always put it on the threads, but I also put it right around here and a little bit on the face of the whatever this doohickey's called. Rotor. Yep, that's it. It's a rotor. So you can see how it kind of gets rusted behind the wheel there. It just keeps it from sticking, and you don't have to do it, but if you have some, throw a dab on there. Also, start your lug nuts by hand. Don't just stick them in your socket and put your impact gun on there and go to town, because if they're not on their square, you're just going to destroy your lug bolt there. Takes 2 seconds to line it up correctly. Do it right the first time. I'm on the front passenger side. Let me show you kind of how I have this set up. Now, I took the quick jacks out, and I'm working with just jack stands and jacks. And the reason for that is I'm able to keep 3 wheels on the ground. And that way, when I go to lift and put weight to get this all assembled again, it's not gonna lift the car up like it was earlier. So this is actually a better way of doing it. You know, sometimes the little extra tools aren't necessary, but you can see how far I've gotten. What you need to do is you need to remove the 2 bolts that go through your strut here. Mine had this little bracket right here that holds this brake line. What you'll want to do is take it, it's going to be wrapped up here, just slip it off and give yourself a little extra slack. Then you're going to remove this little bolt right here, which is on this side, and that'll come off first. Then you can get to the big nut and the actual bolt that goes through here. Now, the bolt side is going to be a 13/16, and the nut side is going to be a 15/16. So once you've got both those off, you'll need to come over here, remove the pin that's on the back side of the caliper. And on this pin, there's a washer and a little C-clamp. So you're gonna rotate it, pull this clip off, take your washer, and then push the pin out. That will allow you to lift the caliper up and then slide it out like this. I think that's specific to the Cobras. I can't remember it being that way on the GTs, but it's been a long time since I've done a GT. Either way, you don't need to take the whole bracket off. You just want to get the caliper off. Make sure you support it so it's not hanging by that line. So once you're done with that, you'll want to come over and you'll want to take off the nut that's on the top side holding your stabilizer bar. This is, for my car, this is an aftermarket sway bar, but I think all the hardware is the same. It's a 14 underneath, and it's a 14 millimeter nut on top. Be careful because mine popped off and I lost the nut. It took me forever to find it. But once you've got that off, you can lower your jack, which has been under here the whole time, and it will set this down. Lower it down into this position. You can see I've got plenty of room to work with this. I'm gonna actually take the front end up a little bit more, and this will lower even more and give me room to pull this out, and it won't come flying at me and hit me in the face. All right, so I've got this down as far as it will go. I can kind of push on it a little bit. My block of wood wasn't there, but you can see I've got enough room. I should be able to pop this thing up and out, hopefully without killing myself. There it is, and that's it. Now the spring comes out. All right. There is my front spring. You can definitely see a difference in the height, the new one versus the one that was already in there. So we know the front end's definitely coming down. Ah, perfect. All right, so that's how that's gonna go. All right, to put this all back, this is where I've got to jack this up and get everything to kind of come back up where it's supposed to be, and then just reassemble everything. I'm actually gonna clean this stuff up before I do that. This is what the finished product looks like. So this piece is back in its clip. This is what it looked like before I took it off. It had that extra little nut on here. This little bracket comes off. It's only on the top on my car. There was not one on the bottom. 2 bolts, the pin. You can take the caliper off, set it off to the side. Looks all snazzy. Time to go finish up the driver's side and then put it on the ground. See what she looks like. Now you're probably wondering to yourself, I've gotten this far and I never bothered to measure to see what my starting point was. Yes, I did. I actually did it like a month ago. So I do have that measurement. I know what it was before with the old springs, and I'll be able to retake the same measurement and see what we gained or lost. I'm sure we gained. I know we gained in the front. If anything, this thing's gonna have a nasty rake to it. All right, everything is back on. Hopefully correct, because we're gonna go for a quick test drive around the neighborhood, and we're just gonna listen for squeals and squeaks and creaks, and we're gonna see if anything breaks. I imagine I put everything back together correctly, so we're gonna find out. So how did we do with these new springs? Well, it looks like my initial measurement of the rear, something is off. I have 1 7/8 written down, and I don't think that's right. I think it was 2 7/8. I don't know how I messed that up, but my starting point with the Eibach springs on the front, I had a 2-inch gap. So when I lowered the car with the new springs, before I drove the car at all, I was at 1 7/8. After I took it for a quick spin and came back, I was at 1 11/16. So I'm down, let's see, an 1/8 inch initially, and then after driving, I was down 3/16. So definitely made an improvement in the front. And in the rear, I started at 2 3/8, and after the test drive, I was at 2 1/8, so it came down 1/4. Now again, I've got to drive this car, and it's still going to continue to settle. So, you know, we're probably in that 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch at the most range that these things are going to settle in. But I do notice a difference stepping back and looking at the car. Now it's time to do some Ferrari stuff. This will be quick. I'm just going to pop off the door panels, swap out the door speakers, and that car will be good to go. All right, everything is back together. Let's see how these things sound. Yeah, that'll work. I mean, it's just a couple small speakers in here. I don't need much. They sound great. I'll put that in the W column. I have no more shenanigans going on today. Please hit that subscribe button, like button, all that junk for the algorithm. It doesn't cost you anything. It's totally free. I hope you guys have a great new year. Stay hungry, stay foolish.